I am excited today to share a message with you and to share some news with you. The news will come in the message, I promise. But I just want to share a message with you today. We started a new series last Sunday on the book of Daniel, and we will get back to that next Sunday. But I just wanted to share something different today. Just to challenge you and to challenge me. God has stretched my faith so much over the last month to 2 months. And I just want to challenge you today to lean in. I believe that God can do something amazing in your life today if you will listen. You have a note card in your chair. I challenge you, take some notes. There's not going to be a whole lot of stuff on the screen other than a few scriptures. So God's going to speak to you. I challenge you, write some stuff down and let God speak to you. But I want to start today with a question. And I want you to really think about it. But what in your life right now are you believing for? What are you believing for? Is there something in your life? Maybe it's a healing. Maybe it's a financial situation. Maybe it's a promotion at work. Maybe it's a restoration of a relationship. Maybe it's a child that is strayed away from God and you're believing for God to bring them back home. I just want to ask you, what are you believing for? I even challenge you, maybe just jot it down on a piece of paper, the note card that you have. What is the thing that maybe some people around you or with you, maybe even your spouse down deep does not know that you have been believing for something? I just challenge you, jot that down and let God speak to you over these next few moments. Because now that you have thought what that thing is, and you have put it in your mind, and maybe you even wrote it down, I just want to ask you another question. Do you believe that it can happen? Do you believe that the thing that you are believing for can actually happen? I've been stirred over the last several weeks that there are miracles that God is wanting to do, but He is waiting for us to do two things. I want to tell you, we're going to read through a passage, but I want you to write these two things down because we're going to go back to them throughout the message today. But I believe He is waiting for two things from all of us for miracles to start happening in your life and in our church. And one is He is waiting for us to believe. He is waiting for us to believe. We already talked about this morning. One thing that God cannot do is fail. But He is waiting on us to believe that He can do the thing that we're believing for. And then the second thing, He's waiting on us to ask. He's waiting on us to ask. I want to read a passage. This will be on the screen. John chapter 14, verses 12 through 14. It says, "Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it." There's two things throughout that passage that gets repeated. It's believe and ask. Believe and ask. I mean, how crazy. I remember preaching this very early on when we launched the church last year. How crazy is it? This passage in the Bible, it is written and read. This is Jesus himself speaking. He is saying, whoever believes in me, you will do the works that I have been doing. If you read your Bible, Jesus did some crazy miracles in the Bible. And he is saying, if you believe in me, you will do those things. But not only that, you will do even greater things than these. I mean, we're talking about the man that spit on dirt, made mud, rubbed it on somebody's eyes, and all of a sudden the blind could see. We are talking about the man that took Lazarus in the tomb, raised him from the dead when there was no way that it should happen. We are talking about the man that opened deaf ears, that took a small amount of fish and loaves and fed 5,000 people. That man is saying, you not only will do these things, you will do greater things if you will believe and ask. I wonder if there's anyone here this morning that is believing for something from God that you have not asked Him for yet. Is there a chance that anybody in here is believing for something, but you have not asked yet? Because if I'm being transparent, I have been here. I have been in this place where I feel like I'm believing for something, but maybe I'm not having enough faith to ask. I wonder, are you believing for a healing, but have you asked Him? Are you believing for relationships to improve, but have you asked Him? And then I wonder, the other people in the room, I wonder how many of us have asked Him for something that we aren't really believing Him for. How many of us have asked for something, but we're not believing Him for it? As a parent, I know my boys, they do this all the time. They ask me for stuff. I know down deep they have to know it's not going to happen. Like, there's no way. As much as I love them, I can't put a zoo in the backyard. Like, as much as I love them, I can't transform our house into a Minecraft studio. Like, there are certain things that when they ask me, they know that it can't happen. But I wonder how many times do we go to God and we ask Him for something, but we don't really believe Him for it. And this is where I found myself recently. I found myself asking for something, but I wasn't really down deep believing for it. I found myself being able to muster up the faith to say it and ask for it, but then I didn't have the faith to truly, in my heart, believe for it. Any of you that were here with us a month ago, 28 days ago on September the 13th, we celebrated our 1-year birthday as a church. 4 weeks ago, we celebrated 1 year and all that God has done in 1 year. We talked about how God had allowed us to give away over $32,000 to other churches and missionaries and local outreaches. And we talked about how we had seen over 60 people get saved. And we talked about all of these things and we celebrated what God had done, but then we looked forward to what God would do next. And on that day, I told everyone that the thing that I felt that God was asking me to believe for was that sometime during our 2nd year, we would find a home. We would find a permanent home for Purpose Church. For any of you that are new with us, you might not know this, but every single Sunday, all of this stuff is portable. We have a 24-foot trailer and all of this pipe and drape, and we transform a room that is supposed to look like a restaurant into something that looks like church. And this happens every day, and we have had faithful people doing it for over a year. But we started believing that, God, could we look forward in year 2? Could you provide a permanent home? So we prayed that day, and we asked that day, and we celebrated. I didn't tell anybody this in the room that day, but we already had an appointment lined up for the next day. September 13th was a Sunday. On September the 14th, we already had an appointment to go look at a building. And we were praying, and we were believing, and we were excited because we thought this building was in the perfect location. We thought it was potentially in a price that could work. So we went out there, we met with Jenny went with us as a realtor so we could see it. I brought a friend of mine who knows construction. He met us there and we looked at this building. And I remember the excitement walking in, and that's where the excitement ended. Because looking at the building, we realized very quickly it's going to take at least $100,000 to build this thing out to make it work for a church. at minimum. It was concrete, holes in the slab from plumbing. Someone had rented it and took off in the middle of a build-out for a doctor's office. So literally, it was going to take at least $100,000 to build it out. We thought it could potentially work for us for maybe 2, maybe 3 years, but they were telling us they would want at least 5 years to sign on a lease. And I remember leaving that building that day frustrated because I thought, like, God had already put in my heart, like, hey, let's believe for a home this year. Let's believe that God is going to do it. And in my mind, as I said it, I was thinking, man, we've already got the appointment lined up. Most people do not realize this, but I have been looking at buildings for over 6 months. There's a website called LoopNet. It's like HAR for houses. I have looked at every building in the greater area trying to figure out, is there anything that could work for us? And I thought this was the one. But I walked out and I was frustrated because I knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, me and Lisa looked at each other. We looked at Jenny. I talked to my friend, and we all knew that there was no way this was our home. None of us had a peace that this was where it was. And I remember 1 week later, again, this has all happened since September 13th in the last 28 days. I found myself later that week sitting on the couch one evening, and I told Lisa, I'm not going to look anymore. I'm frustrated. I'm just going to leave it up to God. I'm not looking for buildings anymore. I'm tired. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago on Sunday during worship. I don't know why, but as I was standing during worship, and this might be bad for our online audience, I apologize, but during worship, I was standing right here, and I was just listening to them, and I was entering into worship, and the whole time I'm in worship, I'm just thinking, God, I had a friend that just found a building that was completely built out as a church, and it worked perfect for him, and it was almost move-in ready, and he doesn't have to pay any hidden fees that all of these buildings are trying to charge us, and it worked for him. God, I wish, in my mind, I'm thinking, I wish we could just find that. I wish we could find something that was built out as a church so we didn't have to build it out. I wish we could find something in the area that would work for us. I wish you would show me. And as clear as day, I felt like God said, why don't you stop wishing and start believing? Why don't you stop wishing and start believing? And I remembered in that moment, I'm standing here during worship, and I just had tears well up in my eyes because I realized what I had been asking for, I wasn't believing for. I had the faith to say it. I had the faith to ask for it, but I wasn't believing for it. And as I walked up that morning, literally after worship, as I stepped on that second step like I always do, literally I hit that step and God told me, look again. And I didn't know what it meant. I almost literally came up here and said, I don't know what somebody's going through, but I feel like God is going to tell you, look again. I literally almost said it. But I felt like God was telling me, I'm not telling them, I'm telling you, look again. So I'm preaching 2 weeks ago the whole message, and I'm thinking about all this stuff that God told me during worship. And I'm thinking about this word, look again, and I get the message out. And I go home that afternoon. And as I'm sitting at the kitchen table, I decided to go to the bank real quick to take care of some stuff. And on the way home from the bank, I felt like God again told me, look again. Look again. And I didn't know what it meant, but for whatever reason, there was a building that popped in my mind that I had seen online that we never even went to look at. I didn't even know for sure where it was at. I had just seen the online listing. So I came home and I was like, you know what? I'm going to look again. I go into my dining room and I'm sitting at my dining room. Lisa is here and my mother and father-in-law are right here because they'd come over for lunch. And I pull up the computer and I told Lisa, I don't know why, but I feel like God is telling me to look at this building again. I looked at it about a month and a half ago and I saw the listing. I saw the price. I saw what the building looked like and I just like, oh, well, not for us. But I feel like God's telling me, look again. So I showed her the pictures. And she's like, oh, I don't know why he's telling you that. I said, I don't know either, but let's just drive over there. So my in-laws are like, y'all go, we'll watch the boys. So we drove over. We get there to find out we can't even get in because the parking lot has a gate that we were under the impression was locked, and it was not. We found out later. But we just drove by, and neither one of us were like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, this is the one. And I told Lisa, I can't describe it other than telling you I have to look at this building. I feel like God has put this in my heart and in my spirit, and I have to look. I have to look. But as we closed the service out 2 weeks ago, and as I was sitting there in worship thinking, God, I wish, and He told me, why don't you believe and stop wishing? We came up here that Sunday to close service, and I told you all about my friend. And I said, we're excited for their church. They're going to have their first service next Sunday in their permanent location. We're excited for them, and we're going to celebrate them. And right now, we're going to believe in faith that we know what they found is sitting somewhere in this area for us. There is a building already sitting somewhere that is ready for us. There is an owner whose heart is going to turn towards us for whatever reason, and we don't know when it's going to happen, but there is something out here. That Monday, we went to look at the building. And we walked in, me and Lisa and Jenny, and we walked through it with the owner, and we weren't really blown away. And I was thinking, God, you told me, like, look again. And I'm here, and I'm doing it. And all of the pictures that we had seen, everything had been redone. So it looked so much nicer than what we were expecting when we walked in. But for whatever reason, I was like, why, God, I'm not feeling it. And I remember we walked outside, and we stood outside, me, Lisa, and Jenny, and we were just talking. And the owner came up and said, if y'all have any questions, let me know. His office is directly next door to the building. And I decided, you know what? He left it unlocked. Let's go in and look again. And again, I had never, I'm not telling them prophetically or anything what I'm feeling, but we walked back in, and in that moment, God began to show us things. God began to show me things that could happen in that building. God began to show me how uniquely that building was positioned. God began to show me what an area could look like if we would plant a church in that area, if we could move and put our church in that area. And He began to show me how we could rework some things that didn't seem like they would work. And I remember we left that day and I said, well, let's just pray about it. 3 days later, I asked my friend who's good with construction to come out and look at it and see what his thoughts were. And he walked through it. And on his own dime, didn't charge us a dime. He actually did the construction drawings for us to get back to the owner that normally would cost thousands of dollars. We didn't have to pay anything because God has favored us so greatly. I sent them that drawing. They sent back their proposal. And I had asked him that day, could you give me some numbers for rent and things like that? And this building was actually a little out of our price range originally. And he began to give us numbers. And I was like, this could actually work. Like maybe this could work. Well, last Tuesday or Wednesday, myself and Lisa and Jenny and Sean, who many of y'all, if y'all don't know this, Sean is one of our board members here. So we obviously look for wisdom and things like that. We asked them to come meet with the owners with us. And we walked into this meeting, and I just said, God, give us peace, give us favor. We were at breakfast that morning, and I want to tell you how good my faith is. Sean and Jenny looked at us, and you have to remember, Jenny's a realtor by nature. So she's a negotiator, and she looked at us and said, well, what are y'all wanting from the meeting today? And I said, well, the numbers he gave us are pretty good. I think we could make them work. And she didn't say anything back. And I was like, that's not like Jenny not to say anything back. So we get to the building, and we get out of the truck, and Sean comes up to me. And I wasn't expecting this from Sean, I'll be honest. But Sean's like, hey, why don't you let me talk with the owner? Like, just everyone's got wiggle room. Why don't you let me talk to him, see what we can do? Well, long story short, we ended up having a conversation with the owner who all of us agreed what an amazing family that this would be to rent a building from. What an amazing family. Like seriously, some of the greatest, nicest people you could meet. They've been in the area for years and years. They've owned the building for over 20 years. What an amazing opportunity this could be. And we start talking. And we had a list of questions. And Sean just started going through our questions. And every single question we asked, he didn't even think about it. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, we could do that. And then Sean gets to the very end and he asks about the overall rent and what that would look like. And because Sean asked, we were able in that moment to save $18,000 over the life of the lease for this building if we move forward with it. And we began to think, God, like, could this be it? What I want to tell you is something special can happen when you get the combination of asking and believing. Too many of us are stopping with one or the other. But God is saying if you will ask and you will believe, miracles like a signed lease for a building, for a church that is less than 18 months old, that walked through the middle of a pandemic, that have been favored by God for some unusual reason. These are the kind of miracles that become common when you are willing to ask and you are willing to believe. I wonder what's the miracle that you've been waiting for, because I want to shift your perspective this morning. Your miracle, you're not waiting on it. It is waiting on you. The miracle that you are believing for right now, it is not waiting. It's waiting on you just to believe and ask. This building has been sitting vacant since January. It was just sitting there, waiting on me to ask and believe. The perfect situation. The situation that we should not have been able to find. There's no way. Every building we have looked at would require a $100,000 build out. This building required $8,000. We already gave them the deposit to start construction. Every building we looked at was at minimum $2 a square foot per month. This building, after negotiations, we are getting for under $1 a square foot. This does not happen unless it's the favor of God. I just want to ask you, what are you asking for but not believing for? Or maybe you're believing for it, but you haven't had the faith to ask for it because something special can happen when you do both. I want to show you a drawing real quick. They're going to throw this up. But this is what our new layout is going to look like. And there's actually 2 rooms that are not on this drawing. So up here in the left-hand corner, you see a kid's room and a hallway and another kid's room. On the other side of that, there's a kitchen and another larger kid's room that's bigger than any of those kids' rooms. And the amazing thing is this entire drawing, as you see it, it takes the addition of 2 walls and we're ready to move in. Everything is done. Everything is done. We're literally, I know this is bad for the camera, we're adding this wall and this wall. Everything else is done. Just sitting there waiting for me to ask and waiting for me to believe. What is sitting waiting on you to ask and believe? You're not waiting on your miracle. Your miracle is waiting on you. So here's the deal. God is amazing. If you don't believe that God can do miracles, I just want to tell you, this is not supposed to happen. I have looked long enough to know that this was not supposed to happen. There's no way. At a church our age and our size, this should not have happened. But it's a great place for God to show up. And maybe something in your life you have been thinking, this is not supposed to happen. It's a great place for God to show up. Maybe you're standing against something right now that looks impossible. Our God specializes in impossible circumstances. I called over 15 different individuals to talk to them about this building. For anybody that wonders, I am all about taking steps of faith, but I am all about seeking out wisdom. So I called pastors, and I called some business people that I know. And I called one person in particular the night before we went to have the negotiation meeting, that the goal was to sign a lease and walk out with the building that day. I called him that evening because I thought if anybody was going to tell me no, it would be him. So I called him. And I said, because he's done this for other churches. And he said, tell me the details and tell me this and tell me that. He's like, that's crazy, man. And I said, well, God gave me a word in January of unusual favor. And we have continued to just see unusual things happen. We haven't had a Brinks truck back up, but God has just favored us in unusual ways. And he said that would be the way to describe it. He said, because I would say it's crazy, but unusual will work also. But he actually told me, and this is a business person that I respect, someone who has done amazing things for himself and for his family and to advance the gospel because of his generosity. And he actually used these words. He said, it kind of sounds like a no-brainer. And I was thinking, if he's telling me it's a no-brainer, could it be that God is showing us so clearly that this is the door we are supposed to walk through? And then look what God did. Because we asked and we believed. So I want to tell you, this was a miracle that we've been believing for that many of y'all didn't even know we were believing for at the moment. I didn't tell anybody back in March when I was looking at properties when COVID started. I didn't tell anybody. And then I told Lisa, well, there's a certain number for giving that we're going to have to get to be able to get a building. And that number is still higher than where we're at right now. But what I didn't anticipate was, well, God could just bring the rent number down and make it work. That's the first miracle. And this is like, I can tell you, like walking through it, this is one of the biggest miracles that I've ever been a part of. And you might not believe it, but I'm telling you, you don't see it from my perspective. You don't talk and communicate with the amount of pastors that I talk about. I was on a conference call just Thursday with a pastor, and we were giving each other updates. And he said, well, man, we're believing God. We're in a meeting, starting conversations with a venue. We've been portable for 10 years. Portable. And I kind of felt bad to say, we actually signed a lease last night. Like, it's crazy. God is so good. But God has done things that don't make sense. But that's the miracle that we believe for and we ask for. So now the next miracle we're going to believe for and ask for is God's going to provide every single thing that we need to start day one when we walk in that building. And some of you might be wondering, because I didn't give details, sorry. We will be moving into this building in January. We will have the building in December. We'll have a whole month to get it ready to do what we want to do. We'll continue to have church here throughout the rest of the year. And a lot of people have asked me, well, what about your lease at Constellation? How is all that going to work? Are they going to let you out? Our lease expired in this building in August. And for whatever reason, I told Lisa, I do not have a piece to go longer than the rest of the year. I don't know why, but I don't have a piece. I'm going to see if they'll give me a lease for just the rest of 2020. And they did it. So our lease expires at the time we move into a new building. So we're honoring what we signed here, and we will honor what we sign at the next place. We have already spoken with them. They are so excited for us. The general manager of this facility said, man, we've had 4 churches come through here in the last 7 to 8 years since we've opened. Nobody's been able to move out and get a building as quick as y'all, but I am so excited that this happened for y'all because, man, we are excited for y'all. It's a miracle. I want to share something. I didn't even think about this until worship. But God spoke something to my heart 2 years ago before we launched the church. He gave me 2 words that I never shared with anybody except Lisa and one other person. And I went back and I found the Facebook message where we were communicating back in February of 2019, almost 2 years ago. And it was someone who was talking about possibly coming to our church that ended up not coming to our church, and that's perfectly okay. But I said, God has given me 2 words because she was sharing something with us. And one of those words that he gave me that I've never shared publicly was what has taken others years will take you months. And I was thinking, if I'm honest, this is before we launched the church, we're going to have people everywhere. We're going to be multiple services. It's going to be amazing because that was my interpretation of that word. But now as I look back, I realize what has taken other years took us months. And God provided something for us that generally takes years. And then the other word that God gave me was that there would be people from our past that come in to walk into our present and into our future. And anybody that knows us, we never asked one person, we never went to one person from our past and said, will you be a part of Purpose Church? Never did it. But people came to us. And I look around this room and see people that have been in our past that are now walking into our present and into our future. One of those people who had not told us yes yet was the young lady leading worship who moved here from Tulsa, Oklahoma with her husband Lucas because they wanted to be a part. I used to be her youth pastor when she was 12 and 13, and now she is carrying the vision of what God has given us into the future. I have seen 2 words that God gave me 2 years ago come to pass. I saw that one happen quickly. But the whole thing about what's taking people months what's taking people's years will take you months. I kept wondering, God, when's that going to happen? I mean, I remember standing here sometimes and thinking, God, when's that going to happen? Is the word that it's only going to take me months to close the church? These are thoughts that go through my mind sometimes. You can judge me, it's all right. But I would think, God, when's that going to happen? All the while, he's saying, if you'll ask me and believe me, it'll happen. My question for you is, what are you waiting on? Will you ask for it and will you believe for it? Because I can already tell you, I have a level of faith right now that is at an all-time high. Because if I can see God do what God has done, you can't tell me that he's not going to do it again. You can't tell me that God isn't going to work behind the scenes and get every single dollar that we need. You can't tell me that even right now that there are not pastors and people whose hearts are being turned towards us for whatever reason. You can't tell me that. It's already happened. Before I signed the lease, I called a pastor in Ohio to ask him for advice. He's one of our overseers. And he said, hey, are you going to need chairs? I said, yeah, we're going to buy better chairs. He said, what kind? I told him the chair, literally the exact chair, the exact color, and the exact size. I got 100 I'm going to figure out how to give you. Before we even signed the lease, God was already providing the stuff we would need inside the building. So you cannot tell me that God is not going to do it. And I know you might be sitting here right now thinking, oh, he's about to start asking for money. I'm not. We do an end-of-the-year offering every year, and it's the only special offering we do, and it will remain the only special offering that we do. You're not going to hear me asking you to sign a pledge card. You're not going to hear me asking you to sign up for a telethon. We're going to present what God has given us, the vision for that space, and we're going to say now we're going to believe that God is going to do it. I want to challenge each and every one of you in this room today to ask and believe. The team's going to come up, and we're going to go back into a time of worship. We'll do it again. But I just want to ask you today again. Everybody, when we started, you had something on your heart and something in your mind that you're believing for. When was the last time that you asked God to do it? When was the last time that you had faith to verbalize to God the thing that is hidden in your heart? And I know what you're thinking. God knows what's there. He does know what's there. There are some times that my boys ask me for something that I already have. I've already bought it. And I'm just waiting for them to ask me. I'm waiting for them. And when they ask me, you can have it. And that's the picture of God, I believe, that I'm trying to show you today. He has already bought and paid for what you need. He has already bought and paid for the thing that you are believing for in your heart. And He is saying, will you ask me? And then there's some of you, you're good at saying the right thing. You're good at saying it, and that's where I was. I was good at saying, let's believe for a miracle. And now I'm going to wish to the genie somehow it's going to happen. Maybe instead of having just the faith to ask, we then have the resolve to believe. And we say, God, we need you to do this in our life. Every eye closed, every head bowed for just a moment. But if you're in this place today and you say, I don't know Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior, I want to tell you that every single thing that we do, the building that God has provided for us, He is providing it for us to get people that are lost to know Him. It is our number one focus, always has been, always will be. You are not in this place this morning by accident. You are here by the direct or ordained steps of God. And I want to challenge you, if you're in this place and you don't know Him, if you say, if I walked out the door today and for whatever reason breathed my last breath, I don't know where I would go. I want to tell you, you have a God in heaven that no matter what you've done, no matter what you've said, no matter where you've been, no matter what's been done to you, He loves you and He's for you. And He wants to forgive you, and He wants to restore you, and He wants to redeem you. And all you have to do is ask. You've got to ask Him to come into your heart, and then you got to believe that He's real. But if you're in this place today and you say, I've never asked Him into my heart, or maybe I have, but I've walked away and done some things that I shouldn't have done. But if you're in this place today and say, that's me, I'm not going to make you get up or stand up. If you'll just lift your hand so I can see you, we're going to pray where you're at. Is anybody in here? So I need to accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior today. Is there anybody? I see that hand. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, if everybody will repeat this after me, I believe that you sent your Son Jesus to die on the cross for me. And on the third day, He rose again. I ask you right now to forgive me of my sins, to come into my heart. I give you control. I will live for you from this day forward. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you just made that decision to follow Jesus, we would love to celebrate with you and give you a free gift. Please email us at info@purposechurchtx.com, and we'd love to get back with you as soon as possible. Join us again next week. Thank you so much.